prepare yourselves for what you're about to see. Bust it up in there.
The fast life, the fast living. They see the ambition, they know I'm past driven. Look, we are not the same, this is not a game. I was swerving through the city in and out of lanes.
Just working through everything. About to pull the sway bar off. Got really lucky here. All the connectors going into the electronic power steering are fine. A lot of the time when they get hit, the connectors will get smashed, so we're good on that. Really, other than the obvious things like the oil cooler, the pan, and the steering rack, I'm not really finding any of their damage. All of like the coolant lines and stuff that just narrowly escape danger are perfect. Yeah, I'm really stoked on it. As long as this motor's good, this is gonna be a sweet track car. If we gotta buy a motor for this thing, it's gonna kind of suck, but we'll figure it out one way or another. So what we've gone ahead and done here is remove the control arms. We remove the tie rod, the outer tie rod from the knuckle, and the lower arm and tension strut, which all seem to be good. They don't look bent or anything, which is awesome. I didn't expect it since most of the damage is straight down the car, but we don't know if he like jumped it or like, you know, went off, who knows what. It almost seems like maybe he could have gone like, it's not the same, like off into a ditch or something. The car was a Massachusetts car, so I mean, it snows and it's pretty wet over there, so really we don't know what happened to this car. But we're almost there. We're basically, everything that's needing to come out of the way has come out of the way. We're gonna leave the rack attached to the subframe. I've pulled, there's a 13 bolt that goes here. I've pulled, obviously, all the suspension bolts. The main thing left holding on the car is there's 1, 2, and 2 more bolts here at the back. So 4 per side bolts plus the motor mounts. I gotta undo the motor mount bolts and just leave the motor mounts attached to the car for the engine. And this subframe is basically ready to come out. Maybe took me all of 45 minutes to get here, if that. So yeah, we're gonna go ahead and go up top real quick. We're gonna put an engine support bar on the engine to hoist the engine up and support it when we take the subframe off, and then we're gonna drop this subframe down.
Where's the Manji?
Last things we got to do before we start zapping the actual subframe bolts is remove the 3 motor mount bolts. Holding the motor mount in, go ahead and zap those real quick. I like to leave the center ones just because they're the easiest to get right here on both sides in, and then put a little pull stand under here and go ahead and drop her down. All right, guys, now you guys can get a much better look at what's going on here. Transpan, missed the trash there. So steering rack bolt went through. Obviously we got a massive hole from whatever it was, rock, tree stump, I don't know, that dented the subframe and the oil cooler here. Whatever hit this, took this out. And so we've pulled all the bolts out of the oil pan and out of the transmission bell housing here at the back. The only thing holding it on is just the few years of it being on, and just a little pry bar action on it will break it free. So we're gonna go ahead and do that right now. Whatever happened, I don't know. So good news is our oil pump seems to be okay. I was worried this was gonna be okay. We got no bearings or metal material. Let's take a look in here. So we got chunks of oil pan, but as long as we don't have any shiny stuff, which is a little bit, but nothing too crazy. I don't see anything stuck in the pickup there. This thing is quite busted. Let's go ahead and break that off. Yeah, so we're gonna go ahead and drop this oil pump real quick, and then we're gonna go ahead and get this upper plate off, which I have a replacement, and I think we're just gonna put her back together. I'm gonna take a good look inside the motor, maybe wipe it down, any dirt and stuff that I see in here. We're definitely gonna do a good oil change on it once we get it running, but let's hope this thing's good. What do you guys think? Put it down in the comments. Is this motor good? I have no idea right now. We will find out shortly though. There it is. Gasket down. And all right guys, so some interesting findings. Quite a bit of junk up here in this oil cooler. Guarantee this thing wasn't working too well. And turns out that the radiator is bent a little bit, but not leaking water, so we're probably gonna just run that for now. I also really can't get it out with the engine hoist on at the moment. I'd have to like take it out the bottom and it'd be kind of a pain. So we're just gonna leave that for now. Ended up taking it a step further. I saw a couple little kind of chunks of what I thought were maybe bearing material. So I ended up going ahead and pulling a bearing cap off to find not completely scorched bearings, but definitely worse than I would like to see for 40,000 miles. Luckily, all the crank journals have been good. These back ones have probably been a little bit more crusty than, say, these front ones here. I was lucky to have some ACL race bearings in stock on the shelf, and I also had some ARP bolts. So we're going ahead and putting ARP bolts. As you can see, I've got two lubed up, ready to go in there. Bottom bearings, top bearings, the way you can tell is the bottom bearing tang is on the left, and the tang for the top is on the right. They also look like they're slightly different material, like they have different coatings on them. I don't know if that's actually the base material is different or not. I believe they do run a slightly different compound top to bottom. But we've gone ahead and got this journal wiped down real good, and every single bore I'm basically just spraying out, making sure there's no, gunk and stuff in there. There's gonna obviously be residual stuff if there was bearing breaking down, or just even like looking here, I don't know, there's looks to be like chunks of bearing almost. You see that? Probably glitter in the screen. Not a lot, just a little bit here and there, and it's hard to say if that was the oil pan busting and kind of just getting smashed around in here on the counterweights and stuff like that as the motor was still turning. Haven't seen any like big, gouges or anything out of the counterweights. I've been trying to look for any other damage that was kind of not foreseen to begin with, and we seem to be okay. The motor definitely is dry. I can see the cylinder skirts are a little bit dry, so I may probably shoot some WD-40 from down here up in there, but I may even pull the spark plugs and drop a little bit of oil down on top of each piston to help them with lube on startup. Questionable. I looked in this pump pretty good. I don't see anything in there, but part of me is like, should I just fucking throw a new oil pump on it while I'm here? I don't know. I feel pretty good about the oil pump just because this suction pipe here, when you looked inside of it, like I didn't see one piece of glitter inside of there. So I don't know. The chances of something getting sucked up, probably slim to none, because there's a fat hole and that thing wasn't really doing much. being that all the oil was just falling out. So I'm thinking that most of the shit didn't get sucked up, and whatever metal is in the motor is due to running a little bit dry, or chunks flying in here and kind of getting scattered around. So yeah, last thing to do is to torque this last, the 5th one, and then I've got to pull the oil pump to do number 6, which is actually number 1. But 4 out of 6 are done so far, and we're just wrapping up number 6, or number 5. Forgive me, it's late right now. So we are just gonna wrap this up, put a little bit of assembly lube on the bearing and on the upper one. Once we install it, I put a little bit on the crank just to make sure, since this motor is so dry, who knows how long it's gonna take to get oil pressure. It could take 10 seconds, 5 seconds. But I just want to make sure she's protected, so I've gone a little heavy on the assembly grease, assembly lube, to make sure that she's real good. But other than that, you know, it's a pretty typical S55. Everything seems to be here, other than, you know, the corrosion that's on it from obviously the salty roads that they were driving on. So I'll go ahead and make sure to degrease this car and clean it up real good once we get it up and running again. Super lucky though that I had the bearings in stock and the ARP bolts in stock, because I would have had to wait a few days, and I was kind of questionable on whether I wanted to do that or not. I also have on the shelf here, which is nice, oil pan gasket. Now it is a Victor Rhines. I'm not the biggest fan of Victor Rhines, but I just have it, so I may use that to be cheap. Since this is kind of a budget build, I'm just using things in stock, and I also have brand new oil pan bolts. I did also already pull off the oil filter just to check, because I was a little worried, so I was like, let's check the oil filter housing. And to be honest, there was no glitter in the oil filter housing. Now the oil filter itself is extremely dry, but doesn't seem to be any metal in here. When I fold it open, I don't see any glitters, so that made me feel positive. One more thing, let's show you these old bearings. So I mean, they weren't roached, but this black here that I'm seeing, and can't really feel anything, but the center there looks like it was pretty dry. Going around right where the oiling hole is, that's kind of what seems to have been wearing there due to lack of oil. The little bit of black really makes me think that it was starting to get hot. So I think we're gonna be okay. I think we got lucky on this one. I think somebody just turned it off just barely, you know, before it completely killed itself. What was nice, when I pulled the oil cooler off, there was a lot of oil in here, and I made sure to look at the oil and look for glitter, and there's no glitter in the oil cooler, so good there, which means the line should be clear. And I do have a new oil, which another lucky thing, I've had all these things in stock for one of my other cars that I was going to do some stuff on. But we have a Mishimoto upgraded oil cooler, comes with new O-rings and bolts, so that is pretty sweet. We're going to be throwing that on the car here as well. But yeah, I mean, overall, just you know, crossing my fingers and hoping that there's no real long-term damage. The main bearings, being that they're all in line and there's no like centrifugal or I'm so tired, honestly. It's like here my brain is kind of not working well, but main bearings generally will last a lot longer than rod bearings, seeing as that the rod bearing is seeing a lot of forces that the crank main bearings aren't seeing, due to, you know, the power stroke and the weight of the piston coming up and down, where the crank doesn't really, crank bearings, main bearings don't have to deal with as much forces side to side and up and down. So hoping that what we've seen here on the rod bearings is the worst of it, and that the main bearings are still in really, really good shape. I don't feel like going and pulling the main bearings, as it would be a real pain in the butt, and I would have to pull this upper, I might as well just pull the motor end at that point. And that's more than I'm looking to do to get this car running. So we're gonna just cross our fingers and hope that this motor has a long life after this, and you know, we just saved its day. So let's keep moving. I'm gonna get this last bearing in, I'm gonna go ahead and get the pump off, get the front bearing in, and then I'm gonna start working on this transmission and get the trans pan off and just check all that out. I imagine maybe the suction pump that's in there and the filter. Definitely just gonna do the filter while I'm in there. But yeah, so we're gonna keep on moving forward and hope that everything is good. So wish me luck.